Okay, good morning, Morai Rabotai. We are continuing on Masechet Chagigah, and we are on Daf of Aleph, Amud Bet. The learning of Amud Yomi today is dedicated to Zchut, Yeshua ben Dina Diana and Yael bat Rivka. So we started really the third parak. The first Mishnah discussing the differences between Kodesh and Terumah. And we mentioned that later on in the parak we're going to have also the reverse, the things that Terumah is more chamur, more stringent than Kodesh. But here right now, we're discussing 11 or maybe 10 different items that Kodesh is more chamur, it's more stringent than Terumah. And we went through a list of 11 things that we counted. And the Gemara started discussing the very first one, which the Mishnah said, you cannot do tevilah of two vessels when one of them is placed inside the other one, when you want to use the vessels for Kodesh, but you could do that for Terumah. And when I asked, what's the reason? After all, you're putting both of them in the water of the mikveh, you're dunking, they're placed in the water of the mikveh, why not? And we had a machloket. On one hand, Rav Ila said, is because of chatzitza, because we're worried that the weight of the top kli is going to weigh down and not allow the flow of water in between the top and the bottom kli. And therefore, we're not going to allow it because it's a chashash of chatzitza, maybe it's not going to be touching water all around it, and therefore it will be a problem. But by Terumah, we're not so choshesh. It's a chumrah. It's a chumrah that we keep for only Kodesh, not for Terumah. This is what Rabbi Ila said. Now, the Gemara challenged this. The Gemara said, wait a second. We have another case in the Mishnah that talks about a problem that seemingly is a chatzitza. We mentioned that if you have knots and ties and you want to be tovel, you want to dunk that in the water, you have to first untie all of the knots. You have to dry them. Then you could be tovel, you could dunk them in the water, and then you tie them back in Kodesh. But for Terumah, you could even tie it l'chatchila, and then put the knot in. And that is for chatzitza. So how can you have Resha and Sefa of the Mishnah talking about a problem that stems from the same shoresh, from the same reason of chatzitza? Can't be. And Rabbi Ila answered, said, no, it could be. It could be. And the reason that you have to mention both of them is because had you said any of them only without the other one, I wouldn't know the other one. How so? If I only would have told you the Resha, that you cannot do the two kelim because it's chatzitza, I would say, well, that's because the weight of the top one is heavy, it's sitting, but a knot, what's the knot? The water penetrates inside and you're good to go. So therefore, I would have thought that the case of the knot should be fine. Therefore, the Mishnah has to say that. And if a Mishnah only would say that case, that you have to untie the knots and then you could be matbil in the mikveh, I would say, you know why? That's the problem of chatzitza, because the nature is when you put the knot inside the water, it tightens and it doesn't let the water get inside the crevices of the knot. But for two kelim, when you soak them in the water, as the flow of the water comes in, it separates them from each other, and the water flows freely in between them, so it shouldn't be a problem. So therefore, the Mishnah has to say both. And that's how Rabbi Ila answered the problem, right? Now, between us, according to Rabbi Ila, how many cases do you have in the Mishnah? 10, because the two of them are really one. It's one that has two subcategories, but there are 10 things that the Mishnah said, right? That is the answer of Rav Ila. And now we're going to see in today's Gemara, on top of Chaf Aleph, Amud Aleph, Amud Bet rather, the argument of Rava with Rav Ila that reads the reason of the Mishnah differently. And according to him, there are 11 separate reasons and 11 separate cases in the Mishnah, not 10. So says the Gemara. This is 3 lines down from the top of the line, and the Gemara is going to end the reasoning and the Shita of Rabbi Ila. So Rabbi Ila learns that there are the same reason, both the Resha and the Seifa, the case of the 2 vessels inside one another, and the case of the Tvilah with the knot, that you have to open it, untie the knot, and so on. So says the Gemara, Rav Ila letame. Rav Ila is consistent with the time, the reason that he said elsewhere. The Amar Rav Ila said, Amar Rav Chanina bar Papa, Rav Chanina bar Papa, in the name of Rav Chanina bar Papa, Eser ma'alot shanukan. That how many ma'alot there are here in the Mishnah? It's not 11, but it is 10. There are 10 cases mentioned in cases that are in the Mishnah. Chamesh rishonot ben the Kodesh ben lechulin. The first 5 are equal both in Kodesh and in Chulin. Shenasu al tarat HaKodesh. We mentioned Chulin shenasu al tarat HaKodesh is for those unique individuals that they ate their Chulin b'tara. What does that mean, Chulin b'tara? They were careful that even something that is not teruma, is not maser, just a regular sandwich, it would not even come in contact with the shlishi letuma. Because had it been kodesh, right? If it would come in contact with shlishi letuma, it will become tameh. So these are people who were so careful to eat their chulin b'tarat HaKodesh. And that creates a reality that halachically speaking, they should be careful with that. Midrabanan, of course, they should be careful with that. But even that has its limits. Chulin b'tarat HaKodesh is not exactly like Kodesh. There are certain things that a person that keeps that level of tahara has to be careful. And there are certain things that he doesn't have to be careful if it's chulin only. So says Rav Ila, in the name of Rav Chanina bar Papa, there are 10 cases in our Mishnah. 5 of them, the first 5, they are both for Kodesh and also for Chulin shenasu al tarat HaKodesh. Why? Says the Gemara. Well, let's first finish the sentence before we jump into the why. Says Rav Ila, and the Achronot, the 5 last ones, lekodesh avalo lechulin shenasu al tarat HaKodesh. Those are only for Kodesh, but for Chulin shenasu al tarat HaKodesh, we are making. So even if tahara and eats the chulin b'taharat HaKodesh, you don't have to be mindful and careful of those last 5 in chulin shenasu al taharat HaKodesh. Why is that, says the Gemara? The reason being because some of them are a chashash deoraita, some of them could lead into a tumah deoraita, some of them can't really lead into a tumah deoraita. So my tama, chamesh kamaita, the first 5 ones, the itlehu derara de tumah, that they could have a chashash tumah deoraita. That means they could lead into a tumah deoraita. For instance, the first one is the tvilah of a kli betoch keli, right? That's the case that we just mentioned. So what happens if the tvilah of kli betoch keli doesn't work? What happens? You have a kli that's tameh, and now you did tvilah, and tvilah didn't work because there was a chatzitza there. So what happens? Now you have a tumah deoraita. It could be a tumah deoraita. The kli was tameh, and you needed to do tahara in a deoraita level, and now you had chatzitza. If you had chatzitza, your vessel still is tameh mideoraita, and when you touch the kodesh, it becomes tameh. Deoraita is a higher level of tumah. So therefore, not only you have to be careful when you handle actual kodesh, midrabanan we gozer that even chulin shenasu al taharat HaKodesh, you have to be careful with that because it's a higher level of chashash of tumah. Zerara the tum'ah midoraita, the Gemara calls it. A chashash tum'ah on a deoraita level. Same thing is with the second case, and the third case, and the fourth and the fifth. All of those are cases that you could end up with a tum'ah deoraita. But the last 5 cases of the Mishnah, they're all pashut midarabanan. There's no chashash of tum'ah deoraita. Therefore, Chazal never made a gezerah on chulin shenasu al taharat kodesh. So, okay, you want to be machmir by actual handling of kodesh. That's the proper way. But you don't have to extend that on chulin shenasu. But after all, it's chulin. It's not kodesh. It's chulin shenasu al taharat kodesh. So therefore, you don't have to be machmir by the last 5 cases of the Mishnah. Okay. So says the Gemara. Batraita the let leudrara the tuma midoraita. The last 5 that don't have any chashash of tuma doraita. Look azru b'hem. They did not make a gezerah on those ones. The let leudrara the tuma midoraita. Gazru b'hem rabanan lekodesh, but the chulin shenasu al taharat kodesh lo gazru. They did not extend their gezerah on chulin that have been used al taharat kodesh. So says the Gemara, Rava Amar, so this was all Rav Ila. Rava said, no, that's not the reason. The reason is not in Resha, because there's weight of the keli on top and then on the bottom. No, because that would have been a reason of chatzitza. And chatzitza is already mentioned in the Mishnah by the untying of the knots. So Rava takes this very seriously. He's saying it can't be that there are 2 things in the Mishnah that are saying the same reason. Can't be. So therefore, really the first one is not because of chatzitza, it's because of a completely different reason, a technicality in hilchot mikvaot and in hilchot tvila. Now, in order to understand this, we have to give a little preface on hilchot tvila and mikvaot, which is a really large sugya in halachot of mikvaot. What is considered chibur? What is considered attachment of 2 bodies of water, right? You have many mishnayot that discuss this in chod mikvaot, in masechet mikvaot. We had a little bit of it in the last mishnah in second perek of having bodies of water, 3 of them. One of them is arba'im sa in the middle, then one is on the top, one is on the bottom, which each one of them only has 20 sa'as of water. Can you dunk in one of the bottom or top ones? Are they considered attached to each other? You remember that. Now this is much bigger of a sugya than we have touched so far, and it could even be within the same body of water. Now, if you have, let's say, a mikveh, and then you have an opening inside the water to another body of water, which is not necessarily a kosher mikveh. Is that considered now, because of the attachment to the kosher mikveh, that now the second one also is part and parcel of the kosher mikveh, and therefore it will be also considered a viable mikveh? You have 2 pools of water, and now you open a hole in between them. So now the waters are all attached under the ground, right, under the surface of the ground. So is that considered a chibur mikvaot, a attachment of mikvaot? The answer is sometimes yes, and sometimes no. If you have a wide opening between the 2, like a real nice gesund opening between the 2, then we say, what? It's the mikveh. It's the same mikveh. So even though that the second one doesn't have the criterias of a kosher mikveh on its own, but now that it's attached to the other body of water, which is a kosher mikveh, the whole thing is fine, and you could, dip your kelim inside the second body of water. That's what we would say. But if it's very narrow, then it would not be good, because that's not considered attachment. What is the minimum amount of opening that would make something attached to the other body of water is something we would call kishfoferet hanod. What's shifoferet hanod? Shifoferet hanod is what they used for containing their drinks. They put wine and oil and chalav inside the nod. If you take a full skin of animal and then you fold it from the middle on symmetrically in the middle and then sew up all the sides, you'll end up with a thing made out of leather that has two ends as openings. So one of them they would close, and the other one they would put a let's say a reed inside, a large reed piece inside, and they would tie that on the top, and now you have an opening to empty and fill up, and they would plug that, and that would be basically the open. So that shefoferet hanot that they used was about like 4 or 5 centimeters open, right? That was a large opening. Shefoferet hanot is basically enough that you could put your 2 fingers inside shtes spaot and revolve them around without problems, right? And this is considering the opening out and also the thickness of both sides of the wood part of this reed that we mentioned. So it will be the outer circumference, the entire diameter, including the thickness of the thing itself. That would be shefoferet hanot. And that is the shiur, the amount of chibur mikvaot that we need in order to attach one body of water to another one halachically, right? Now, the question is, how about if I want to use a vessel in order to contain my smaller things? I don't want them to get lost. So I want to drop a number of needles and small forks and whatnot inside another vessel, and then knock them all out with tevilah with one shot. Just put them inside the mikveh and chazaku baruch. Everything is good now, right? So if the opening of this bottle that I'm containing these with is less than shefoferet hanod, what would be the halacha? I have water inside this bottle, but is that water considered attached to the water outside in the body of the mikveh? Is it or is it not? Yeah, the outside source was the source for this, but I need a mikveh that is, 40 sa'ah. So it has to be attached. I need still the water outside, right? This inside becomes its own area, has its own area code, right? It's the water inside the bottle. So is that attached or is not attached? What do you say? Anyone wants to disagree with that? No? It's not attached. Fine. That would be a potential problem, right? A potential problem. Now, the challenge I would throw at you guys would be, how about if my kli, I just bought this bottle, right? I need to do tevilat kelim on the bottle itself also. And we all know that tevilah, unlike hag'ala, tevilah has to cover all the parts of keli, and it has to do it all simultaneously. So you need the inside of the kli also to be tovel, right? Can I plug my bottle and then do tevilah on it? No, because the water didn't get inside. So you unplug it and you put it in the mikveh. You say, oh, gee, wait a second. The problem, the opening is not shefoferet hanot. The water that went inside is not water of mikveh, not attached to the mikveh. So how do you even accomplish tevilat keli for any bottle to begin with that the opening is not shefoferet hanot? You hear what the problem is over here? Because you can't have it both ways, or maybe you can. How is this working that I could do tevilah, but you're telling me, all of you, that it's not shefoferet hanot, it's not going to work for the other things inside of it? So is the water inside mei mikveh or is it not mei mikveh? You have to make your mind. Can't have it both ways. That will be the challenge to what everyone here suggested. And that's going to be Rava's diyun over here. That's what we're going to be dealing with. So says Rava Amar. He does not agree with Rabbi Ila. Says Rava, midasefa have mishum chatzitza, untying a knot and drying it, and then doing tevilah, and then going back and tying the knot. That case is because of chatzitza. So therefore, the ratio of the Mishnah cannot possibly be the same reason. He doesn't agree with this whole back and forth of Rav Ila that no, you have the same reason, but it's needed because the first one is heavy, the second one is tightened in the water. He doesn't hold of that. It's chatzitza, it's one reason. So therefore, once the sefa is the reason of chatzitza, the resha can't be chatzitza. So what is taka the reason? The resha hainu tama, 4 lines up. The reason of the resha of not being able to be tovel 2 kelim inside one another is because gezerah shelo yatbil machatin v'sinorot b'chli she'en bepiv kishfoferet hanot. It's a gezerah. We don't allow you to do tefillah of any kli inside any other kli because we are choshesh, we are concerned that you're going to end up using an outer kli that doesn't have wide enough of an opening, and the opening is going to be less than shfoferet hanod, and therefore, in that case, the tevilah would not be considered tevilah for the vessels that you put inside, for all those needles and small forks and whatnot that you placed inside. And because that would be a serious issue, which would not accomplish tevilah at all, we just make a gezerah across the board, say don't do tevilah of keli betoch keli. Okay? So says the Gemara, Keditan, as we learn in Mishnah in Masechet Mikvaot, this is a Mishnah in Perek Vav, Eruv Mikvaot, the combination of Mikvaot, the attachment and chibur of Mikvaot, Kishfoferet Hanod, has to be, when you want to mix the waters and consider both bodies of water as a mikveh, has to be at least kishfoferet hanod. It has to be at the very least as wide as shfoferet hanod, ke'oviyah uchechalala, like the thickness of the shfoferet hanod, and also the cavity, the circumference inside, the inner diameter, which would be halal. The halal is the hollow part of the shfoferet hanot, and oviyah is the thickness of the wooden part of it going around. So, which basically means we are adding those two areas together, so it will be the inner diameter, right? The inner circumference or diameter plus the outer one together. So really, is the thickness of the outer diameter, which is wider and bigger than only just the halal, the area hollow in the middle. So shfuferet hanot ke'oviyah uchhalala keshte etzbaot chozrot limkoman, which is like 2 etzbaot, 2 fingers, each one of the etzbaot. We assume that they're around 2 centimeters. We have what exactly the shiur of 2 etzbaot are, but you need 2 etzbaot that easily could go around, circle around, and that would be if you could have that big of an area that the 2 fingers could be revolved around it inside easily. That would be shfoferet hanot, which would be the minimum shiur of eruv mikvaot.
So the 2 fingers is the inner circumference or the outer circumference? The inner diameter, the outer.
It's the outer diameter.
So what if you have a really thick What if you have a really thick talud?
No, inside of it has to be kishfofer tanod. Again, the node that we're talking about is what they had. So you need a bigger opening than the opening of the node. You need an opening that includes the open area of the shfofer tanod plus the wooden part. So it's a little bit bigger than that. It will be keovia uchchalala, which is kishteh esbaot chozrot dimkoman.
The water permeates the entire thing. What is here? How thin inside?
Well, it has to be connected. Do you say that the water is just sipping out from one to another, or do you say that these two are actually one because they're connected? If there's an opening like a chuta sa'ara, we don't look at it that they're connected. We're just saying one of them is losing some water. It's that they're two separate parts. Well, at some point, when it's wide enough, we say, "Oh, this is the same thing. This is the same body of water. It just has two containers, but they're very much attached from the hole that's in between them." So how thick how wide that opening has to be? It's a minimum of shtes ba'ot chozrot dimkoman, which is kishforet hanod keovia uchchalala. That's the minimum. Anything less than that is not considered eruv mikvaot. It's not considered that the two bodies of water are connected in a halachic way. So says Rava, that is the reason for our Mishnah in the Resha. The reason that we say you cannot be tovel keli betoch keli is because if you have a kli that is narrower in the opening of it on the top than shfoferet hanod, then the tevilah is not good. And if we allow people to use keli betoch keli, we're going to end up doing that too, and we're concerned about it, right? So this is, people don't necessarily know the halachot, right? And then they end up doing the same thing. They say, we did this last year, so therefore it should be okay with this setting also. We always do keli betoch keli. We always put our vessels into another bigger vessel. So who cares how big the opening is? The regular people, amcha, regular ameares, they see the rabbi do a tevilah keli betoch keli, and they don't realize that the rabbi is careful. He knows the halachot, but here you cannot do necessarily that. Now by tevilah kelim, in parentheses, just in general, there's a lot of problems of people not knowing the halachot. You go stand on Erev Pesach or the week, any day before Pesach, in a tevilah kelim mikveh, and you'll see a lot of problems in the way that there is a problem of chatzitza, and therefore they do the tevilah with the stickers on still, right? That's a problem. You have chatzitza there, right? Many people, they bring their plastic bottles and they say bracha on it, and they do the tevilah on the plastic. Now, Chazaku Baruch, the plastic is a little bit of a machloket, but we paskin the plastic is patur from tevilah kelim. So if you're bringing it with your pots and pans, okay, Chazaku Baruch, don't say bracha on that. But if you're only bringing some plastic, then you're saying bracha lebatala. Same would be when you bring like your pots and pans, and you also bring your glassware. Which one do you say bracha on? The halacha would be do it on the one that's more hashuv, because there's a difference. Even though both of them halachically are chayav b'tvilah, their levels are different. Metal is chayav b'tvilat kelim midoraita. Maran paskins that in chot tvilat kelim, Siman Kuf Chaf, Sif Tet, Sif Yud Bet, that the metal, the concept of tvilat kelim is midoraita, right? But glass is midorabanan. So you say it on the one that's more chashuv, or you send your 10-year-old to do tvilat kelim for you. You have a very capable 10-year-old. Can you send the katan to do tvilat kelim? Well, it depends if you're overseeing it yourself or not. If you're not overseeing it, you can't just send the katan to do tvilat kelim if you're not there yourself. And people, they say, okay, I'm in the car, you go run. There's no parking around here next to Anshe Emet. You run inside and do it and come jump back up. That's a problem, right? So again, you have a lot of details of tvilat kelim that are not necessarily known by people, or China. Like, do you take China to Tevilat Kelim? Well, many frum people do. The reason that they do it is because Aruch HaShulchan says you should do it. Why you should do it is because used to be 200 years ago, in the original Chinas, they actually had a thick glass layer as the cover on the earthware of the China, and therefore it's covered with that, and it's chashuv, it's thick enough, it's not batel, so therefore you need to do it. But nowadays, Rabbi Moshe, Rabbi Yaakov, I had a story. I asked this question. I was discussing this with the Berkowitz. Told me when he got married, and he married the granddaughter of Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky. So he said that when they had their wedding set of China, he asked. Rabbi Yaakov happened to be there, and he asked him, and he said, "No, you don't have to do it because it's batel. It's such a thin layer that's batel to the China. You don't have to take it to mikveh." I found later on that Rav Moshe is not in Igrot Moshe, but in some choveret somewhere they bring that was published in America about 50 years ago. They also write in his name that's batel as well, but by itself, it's not so clear what the cover on top of it is. If you take a look at the information that you find online for what it is, the glaze on top, some of them they will tell you that's 90% plus glass, and others will tell you that it's actually just the glaze. It's not glass, really. The pottery that you could do, even buy the glaze and do it at home. If you take a look, many of them are 90+% glass, the material, and other ones, would be just. So it really depends. It's not so simple. So those who take it, chazak u'baruch, but you say bracha chas shalom. You don't say bracha on it, right? Or if you take something that is, let's say an urn, you take it to Tevilat Kelim. You say bracha or not? Not so pashut. There's a shita from Rabbi Yaakov Breish, It was a rabbi in Europe, and then it became rabbi in Sweden, I think. It's Rabbi Yaakov Mordechai Breish in Chalkat Yaakov. In his tshuva, he writes that it's very big, it's a massive chidush, but he writes anything that it works only when it's plugged in is considered mechubar lekarka, right? It's a very big chidush. Harvadia uses this, others use this as a snif lakel, but it's not its own thing really, because he says if you don't plug this urn in the wall, it doesn't work. The whole point of it is to heat up water, and it only works when it's plugged in. When it's plugged in, it's attached to the ground, it's patur from mikveh, right? Now, the halacha is not like him, but would that be enough for knocking out the bracha? They shouldn't say bracha on it, and so on and so forth. So again, Tevilat Kelim is a big thing, but this area of it is certainly something that happens. People want to have small things, they put it in the bottle, and they want to do Tevilat Kelim. Rava says he can't do that, because it's going to be mixed up with having a kli that has a smaller opening, and that will get you into trouble. And that's the reason of the Reisha, the first case of our Mishnah, that you can't put kli into betoch kli and do tevilah, because maybe you're going to come to do it with a vessel that is narrower on the top than shpoferet hanod, and then it will be a problem. Tomorrow, we will discuss something fascinating, the question that we really ask. If that's the case, how in the world is the tevilah good for the bottle itself? If the water is considered not attached, so how in the world is it considered a tevilat kelim to begin with for the bottle itself? Is something that we're going to discuss Be'ezrat Hashem in today's talk.